In this video, we will learn about the different types of micropipettes and the proper way to read and set the pipettes. Micropipettes will be one of the most used biology lab device throughout your time at Concordia. It is used for measuring a small quantity of volumes that are in the microliter range, so the name micropipette. It's very important that you know how to set it and use it accurately. Let's start by making sure you have your gloves on. Then you're going to locate the micropipettes on a carousel on your lab bench in front of you. On the carousel, you should find micropipettes of 3 different sizes, but you don't need to grab for all 3. Just randomly select one while I'll have all 3 to show you. So hopefully you have grabbed at least one in your hand to take a look right now. Now with the pipette in your hand, let's take a look at the top label. This top label is going to show you the name of the pipette. Now you might not have the exact same one as I have in my hand, but it's okay. So you either have the H20 in your hand, which we're not going to call it H20, but we're going to call it P20 for pipette 20. Or you're going to have the H200, which we're going to call P200 for pipette 200. Or you're going to have the H1000, which is, you guessed it, P1000 as we call it for pipette 1000. Now, each pipette has a very specific range of volume that it measures, and it can again be seen on the top label. So for example, P220 will measure the smallest amount of liquid between 2 to 20 μl. We see that μl again. Do you recall what it stands for from the last exercise? Hopefully you do. μl is microliter. So this means a millionth of a liter, very small amount. Next is P200, which measures the median amount between 20 microliter to 200 microliter. And the last one is P1000, which measures from 100 to 1,000 microliter. Hopefully by now you have figured out how the name works. The name suggests actually the largest amount that the pipette can measure. So for P20, it goes up to 20 microliter. For P200, it goes up to 200 microliter. And for P1000, it goes up to 1,000 microliter. Now, after knowing each micropipette's name and the range that it can measure, the next step is to know how to set it for accurate measurements. Let's say you want to measure 2 microliters. Which pipette will you use? Hopefully you will reach for the P20 because it measures between 2 to 20 microliters, which means for a 2 microliter, we will use P20. However, when you look at the setting window, it has 3 digits. So how would you set it? Well, the trick is to imagine a decimal between the second and the third digit. So you're going to imagine a decimal right there. And for this, I am going to just put a decimal right there. So hopefully you can see that. 2.0. Now this means when you set P20, pipette 20, to 0 to 0, you're really setting it to 0 to 0.0, which is going to read as 2.0, which is 2 microliter. The cool part is the pipette changes the last digit to blue to remind you that it is the digit after the decimal. So hopefully that's going to help you remember how to read a P20. Next, let's say you want to measure 44 microliter. Which pipette should you use? So check out the range. You're not going to reach for P20 because the most it can measure is 20. Remember that. So this time you're going to reach for P200 because 44 microliter is actually going to fall between 20 to 200. Okay, so back to how do you dial this pipette? It has 3 digits. For P200, it's very easy. The trick is what you see is what you get. So if you see 100, you are measuring 100 microliter. Pretty easy, right? Well, then how are you going to set it to measure 44 microliter? Is it 440? No, don't ever do that. You're going to be out of range. So you're going to actually set it to 044. Now, 044 is actually going to give you a reading of 44 microliter. Let's try the last one. If you want to measure 1,000 microliter, how are you going to set it? Hopefully the question gives it away. You're going to use P1000 because it can go up to 1,000 microliter. And how are you going to set it? Well, you're going to imagine an extra zero. So the trick is to imagine an extra zero down below, as I've written here. And so if you need 1,000 microliter, you're actually going to put in, you're going to imagine that extra zero, which means you're going to put in 100, which sounds like 100, not 1,000. But remember, you're going to imagine that zero right there. So it's going to be 100 and then imagine 0. So that's going to be 1,000 to get 1,000 microliter. So dialing to 100 on a P1000 will give you 1,000 microliter. Let's say you want to measure, let's say 950. Are you going to do 950? No, don't do that. You're going to break the micropipette. It cannot go beyond 100 because that's already 1,000. So you're going to go down 950. You're going to actually do 0, 9, 5, and imagine that extra 0 right there. So it's going to read 950 microliter. Okay, so those are the trick and setting of a micropipette. Let's now take a look at exercise 1.3. Please add the decimal onto P20 and the 0 onto P1000. Then input the appropriate power of tens in the window. Stop the video here and please finish this exercise before continuing. If you have finished exercise 1.3, let's check your answer. So with P20, the decimal is between the second and the third decimal. This means after the decimal, it will be 0.1 and before will be ones and then tens. For P200, what you see is what you get. So reading top to bottom will be hundreds, tens, and ones. For P1000, remember, you're going to imagine that extra 0 at the end, which means from the top will be actually thousands, then hundreds, then tens, then ones. Let's now do exercise 1.4 to see if you can apply what we have just gone over together. In exercise 1.4, please label what pipette you would choose to measure the volume indicated, or the setting you should dial to pipette the amount indicated. Oh, make note, there are intentional mistakes in the questions below. If you see a setting that you do not think is correct, then label it mistake and list the reason why. To get started, let's look at the first question. You can see the settings reads 100 and the volume indicated is 10 microliter. Now look at the pipette label. 10 microliter falls in between 2 to 20 microliter. So you will need the P20 pipette for this. Do you remember what was the trick for reading P20? Yes, you're going to imagine a decimal between the second and the third digit. Let's put a decimal there. Now let's double check our answer. Will the pipette with the setting listed give us the volume given? Well, a P20 with a setting at 100 give you a volume of 10 microliter? Yep, with the decimal, it looks right. 10.0 is 10. So this question is correct. And then you can now move on to finish the rest of the question.